Hmm. You hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Uh-oh.
All right, let's get this show on the road. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Torn Tuesday, your weekly dose of all things Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, movies, games. We've got so much to talk about today, and as
Too much.
always,
In fact, we have too much stuff. As always, I'm here having second breakfast. Thanks everybody
second.
for coming to I'm having second breakfast because I need to keep my energy up for such a big show that we have today. A really significant big show. Thank you everybody for coming to the OneRing.net. As always, I am Clifford Broadway, followed by this guy here, Justin Sewell. He's my producer and co-host, and here we are in our little comfortable hobbity corner of the internet. Welcome to Hobbit Town, USA. This is time for second breakfast. But Justin is really, really, really eager, shall we say, for lack of a better word, to get the news rolling out. I want to say a big shout out to the entire live audience that just joined us. Hello, everybody. Discord, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. Everybody, welcome aboard. This is Torn Tuesday. Nice to have you guys here.
Yes, it's always great to have you here. We're live on all of these channels as long as they let us to do let us do this.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
we've got so much news. We've got a first-hand report of the Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim anime feature film coming out next year.
Oh
And
boy. Oh boy. Oh boy.
we've got news on Embracer and the future of Lord of the Rings video games. But first,
Mm.
Cliff, I think we should start with the big news from last week, which is Lord of the Rings Rings of Power Season 2 is officially wrapped, and the wrap
Officially
party
wrapped. Yes.
was on Friday night. Yes, sir. Friday night,
Mm-hmm.
the cast and crew of the Rings of Power were invited to a huge party in London. And I'm talking, it was
Oh.
huge. It was set up like a
Oh.
carnival. It's bigger than anything I've ever seen.
Oh,
Um,
indeed. Wow.
and everybody celebrated. Let me see if I can find some photos here.
Oh, please do. Show us some of that, please. Thank you.
Let's see here. Hold on a sec. Where's this? Where's my browser window? Boom.
I don't know. You tell me.
There it is. Of course, the cups. Who knows if those were alcoholic or virgin cups? But it says the Three Rings Circus. The Three Rings Circus branded cups. They went all out, and then the back of the cup says Season 2 Wrap Party.
Oh, really?
There you go. So Three Rings Circus, which means, Cliff, does this mean that Season 2 has a lot to do with Three Rings being put into play, being put into action?
Makes me wonder. No, That's a funny connection, but it makes me wonder, and I don't need to start off by sounding like a negative Nancy, but literally, why are they spending so much money on a rat party like this, and they didn't spend that amount of money that they clearly have on a fully benched writer's room, fully benched with all the proper staff, with all the staff underlings and the mid-level and the high level and the lower level writers. If they've got that kind of money for a big party, one can also easily use a small stretch of the imagination and can imagine that they could have spent that money on a writer's
Cliff,
room.
I'm gonna
Hello,
need.
supporting the writer's strike. Still, we are
It's
still
week
supporting the
7
writer's
of the
strike.
writer's strike. Week 7 of the writer's strike. So, Cliff,
Let us
speaking
not
of
forget.
stretching your imagination, the cups at the party said LBP Season 2. Can you tell me what LBP Season 2 means? LBP. Maybe someone
I
in the
have
chat
no
room can
idea.
figure it out.
I have no idea. What on earth would that mean?
All the
LBP.
cups, the red cups say it, and the black cups say
Are they
LBP.
initials? Are they initials from somebody?
I don't know. Jeff Bezos? No, that doesn't make sense. Laurence Olivier? No, he's not involved in the show. He's dead. J.R.R. Tolkien? No. McPain? Galadriel? Morfydd Clark? I don't know what LPB is, folks. Is this a code name that we haven't heard yet? And why is it
Hmm.
a code name all the way
Hmm.
to the season 2 wrap party?
I do not understand. But
I don't.
let's see.
I don't know, but we have other pictures, of course, folks. That is Cynthia
LBP.
Robinson,
Hmm.
and that in the back is your man Halbrand. That's Charlie Vickers, looking dark and dusted. That we might be actually getting a dark and morose Sauron for season 2. That guy Charlie in the back does not look like the season 1 fresh-faced, blonde-tipped, blue-eyed, handsome man that almost steals Galadriel from her missing husband. He's definitely got long hair. Um, I see you, Cliff. No, I guess not. Oh, we lost Cliff. Absolutely adore this fan. That is Callum Lynch, new actor, Selena Loco, and a couple other actors. Again, they've announced 20 actors, and let's see here. Cliff says he's out of the Zoom. Let's try this. Let's try to get him back. Da-da, da-da, da-da. The joys of doing a live show. Let's see here. All right. Are we back? Chat room? Checking in. I wonder if Zoom is down. Hold on. No Cliffy. Do you guys see and hear me? We haven't gone anywhere. Well, Cliff's having a hard time to get back in. I wonder if it's just Zoom. Okay, that's what I thought. Wasn't sure if it was me or Clifford. Um, so we've got some more pictures here. Let me go bring this up full screen. So, lots of party photos from the Lord of the Rings wrap party that was on Friday. And let's see here. Trying to get Cliff back, folks. This is why most shows would have a dedicated person behind the scenes doing the magic, so I don't have to bore you with clicking around. Clifford Broadway has joined. Magic. All right. I think I heard
Hello.
Cliff.
I'm back. I'm back.
All right. Cliff's back.
I am back. Yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you for helping me out, Justin. Do you
There
hear
you
me
go.
okay?
Yeah, see?
Hi.
The magic. The cliff is in the void. Everybody was wondering.
Do you know
They
what?
started to hear your voice.
They heard I see you.
So, and
Hello,
here's
everybody.
another.
Welcome back. Nice to be back. Thank you.
Here's another picture of Morpeth at the party. So Charlie looking dark, Morpeth looking pink. Owen hitting it up. Looks like Megan's
What a
there.
fun party. What a really fun party.
Interesting thing about the picture right here in the lower left, those are all the new cast members, or some of the new cast members. And
Yes.
it's interesting that they haven't posted a photo with any of the season 1 cast members. Can we read anything into this? Maybe their primary storylines do not cross over with the season 1 storylines.
That's interesting. I didn't notice that.
Wheatbix in the chat room says, yeah, they seem like they were on different film schedules as well.
Does it really just seem like this is an accidental assortment of images? Is it perhaps just random? And we don't want to make any assumptions like that. But
Well, if you've been
that's what
keeping up
LBP
with all the
stands for.
rumors,
Let's bloody party. That's fine.
Is that what LBP stands for, folks?
Let's
all right,
bloody party.
That's the big mystery of this show. All the cups at this party say LBP Season 2 Wrap Party, and of course 3 Rings Circus. But even those cups say LBP Season 2 Wrap Party. So if someone has any hints, and maybe I'll find out on Discord after the show, because Discord is where all the action has been happening.
Yes.
LBP Season 2. What is that code word? You know what? If someone can figure that out and confirm it somehow, I'll send them a gift. I'll send you a gift if you can tell me what LBP for real stands for and why
I think
Amazon
Keith has it. It's lower back pain. I love it. It's perfect.
Why?
It's
Amazon's
perfect.
carrying the franchise? Is that what we're thinking?
lower back pain. 7. You know what? Get that book, 7 Steps to a Pain-Free Life, and that will help your lower back. Trust me on that. Wow. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. So the party
Garf
happens,
in the chat room. Garf, you picked up on why I pointed her out. Why is Megan in those party images? She is the Harfoot that stayed with the Harfoots. She did not go off on the adventure with her best friend. So maybe the Harfoots are involved in season 2. Maybe she's just a friend of the show at this point. Maybe she was just invited as a courtesy from the lovely people at Amazon Prime. Maybe they said, hey, you might not be in season 2, but we want you at the party.
You know what I think it means?
What does it mean?
I think it's a spoiler and a giveaway that Poppy may have stayed behind in season 1, but somewhere during the misadventures of the stranger and Nori, I get a funny feeling that Poppy just might surprise show up. I couldn't leave you. I couldn't leave you. I made a promise, Mr. Frodo. I made a promise, Mr. Frodo. I couldn't leave you. So there might be something like that, maybe where the character suddenly reappears.
Okay.
Hmm.
Fair. So we've got the big news today, Cliff, was today was the first preview of War of the Rohirrim at the Annecy Film Festival there
We
in
figured out how to
France.
pronounce it right. Thank you to
Thank you.
people in Facebook
Yes.
helped us do this. It
That
is the Annecy Animation Festival in France that we've been talking about for weeks, and boy, get some fascinating feedback from the people who were there.
That's right. And so we were able to get a couple friends of the friends of the show, friends of the site, were at the conference. It is an animation festival. The Annecy Animation Festival
Oh, yes.
is industry only, and it's not like Cannes Film Festival where movies are competing to win a prize. It's more like a technical convention, kind of like SIGGRAPH, or it's not even like E3. It's more like a game developers conference. The Annecy Film Festivals where animators and animation directors go to talk about all of the breakthrough animation techniques that are going on in the current state of animation on projects that might not even be out yet. So this was the first time. So it's interesting that Warner Brothers has chosen a technical conference to debut the first footage. And if you go to the OneRing.net,
In other words, this is not a Comic-Con situation where there's thousands and thousands of fans and all the stars and the voice actors are there. This is an industry show on a different level.
That's right.
And I appreciate you described it that way.
So this is a picture posted by Jason DeMarco, the executive producer of the movie.
Yes, Jason DeMarco. Yes.
He's also the studio head of Adult Swim. If you've watched any of the late night cartoons on Cartoon Network, the late night block of cartoons is called Adult Swim. Jason DeMarco kind of helped create that, and he's been in charge of it for 15 years now and helped make it what it is today. A huge thing. And he's brought tons of anime to the United States through the Adult Swim and Toonami. So Jason DeMarco is one of the most influential and most powerful anime fans in the United States, and he's brought so many shows over to the United States dubbed for American audiences through Toonami and Adult Swim. So he knows his anime, and boy is he excited to be doing a Lord of the Rings anime. And of course, with him right there is director Kenji Kamiyama and the technical animation director Joseph Chow. I might be saying that wrong, but there they are on stage, and of course they were joined by Philippa Boyens, the Emmy or the Oscar and Grammy
winning writer. Yes. You know what? If she's going to get an EGOT, maybe she might go onwards and get an Emmy, and she might get a Tony in the near future, but that hasn't happened yet. EGOT means Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony. So she's got 2 out of those 4, you know.
That's right. And if Warner Brothers and Amazon ever make nice, which I don't see happening, I don't know if she'll get an Emmy for Lord of the Rings, but that would be fun. In at the panel, we have a first look at the panel, and they talked about the writing process beginning with Cliff, your favorite people, Will Matthews and Jeffrey Addis, the showrunners of Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance.
Those guys created such a magical, wonderful experience working within what we call a legacy property. And because of their great success with the legacy property of Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal, not surprising to me at all after they won a Primetime Emmy Award, that
The Dark Crystal won an Emmy?
Yes, they won a Primetime Emmy Award.
Why did it get canceled?
It was canceled the next day. Netflix canceled it the very next day after they won the Emmy for Best Children's Series. And it's stunning But look at those guys. After their success on that, they were brought in right away to work on another, shall we say, legacy intellectual property. And really super cool that they got to jump in on this project.
So they had a hit show with Dark Crystal. They won an Emmy Award,
Huge.
and their follow-up project, their because when you have a
Yeah.
hit show in
Yeah.
Hollywood, Hollywood says, "All right, thanks for the hit show. What's your dream project?" When Peter Jackson won all the Oscars for Lord of the Rings, what did he do? He said, "My dream
Uh-huh.
project is
King
King
Kong.
Kong."
Yes,
And then
that's right.
he said, "What's your second dream project?" The Adventures of Tintin. And he
Adventures
got
of
them both
Tintin.
done.
Yes.
So
Yep.
these
That's
guys who
right.
created the Dark Crystal won an Emmy. They said, "What's your dream job?" And they said Lord of the Rings. So
I'm excited.
Is,
I'm excited about this just because of that. That's what you call um, handing the job to the right people. Yes,
well.
that's
So
what you call
Cliff,
it.
I want to get your feedback then, because in the panel, Philippa says that she felt too old to write this story about a young shield maiden. So Philippa brought in her daughter Phoebe, and Phoebe literally grew up on the sets, and most importantly understands the rhythm of Tolkien's language. So it sounds like they hired some Emmy-winning television writers to do the
Yep.
first pass on the script, and then they brought in a lore expert or and a young person that understands the rhythm of Tolkien's language, who grew up surrounded by Philippa and Fran and Peter.
Yeah, yeah, working
So
together on the project. How about that?
is that how you is that a good process of writing a Lord of the Rings project, where you hand it off to Emmy-winning writers and then you bring in a lore expert to give it the right color and tone?
Interesting approach. Very interesting approach. But I find it remarkable because I know Philippa and she's a wonderful person. But what an interesting and self-reflective statement to say, I felt too old to be able to write these characters at this age. Because, you know, what stopped, Washington Irving from writing the Cider House Rules? And he wrote characters that were much younger than him when he wrote that. So it's okay. I think it's okay, really, for, you know, for a person to say, I appreciate these characters and I want to get a fresh perspective from someone else, but I don't think you should, especially with you being such an accomplished writer, Philippa. I'm not so sure that you should sell yourself short
Look,
into thinking that you just can't write characters of a certain age. Because
I'm
you
sure
can.
Philippa had a guiding light, a guiding hand working with her daughter.
Yes.
In revising
Yes.
the script. But
Yes.
Cliff, compare this to Rings of Power, where we got all excited with a lore expert being involved early on, and then they let him go at Amazon, and then they went and wrote a show that a lot of lore experts don't recognize.
Yes, that's right. That's right. You're talking about Professor Tom Shippey, aren't you?
That's right. Do you agree,
Yes.
Cliff, with Nigel in chat room saying the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance had some of the greatest world building on television, and Rings of Power should take notes?
I agree with that assessment. Yep, absolutely. And here's why. Here's why. The original 1982 film, The Dark Crystal, perhaps it was 1983, but I think it was 82. The original story is paper thin. The original Jim Henson screenplay, and what happens in that movie
Kind
is
of like the appendices, paper thin.
it is just enough to get the movie to get where it's going, and the real hard world building started happening in the graphic novels and the comic books that were published in between late, like the 1980s and now, when Netflix made their series. But yes, I do agree with that assessment. The world building that they managed to do from an original concept and a screenplay that was written by David Odell, because Jim Henson didn't want to write this. He said, David, you can come in. And it was all about Jim Henson's secret spirituality. Did you know that? Jim Henson was a mystic. He was into the New Age and the mysticism, and he was into past lives and karmic regression, and he was into lives that are reborn into recurring new lives. And all these very deep and interesting spiritual ideas, partially guided by Jim Henson's following of a famous and controversial New Age guru named Ramtha. That, well, I remember seeing Ramtha interviewed on Oprah Winfrey Show back in the 90s. Jim Henson took so much of his spiritual belief system in much the same way that J.R.R. Tolkien put his religious belief system in his Catholicism and embedded it into deeply, deeply ingrained into the DNA of the world of Arda, as much as Henson asked for David Odell to put his spiritual ideas and these ideas, and not just ideas, but full-on characters in the story, The Dark Crystal, are undergoing conditions of spiritual change and even transporting from interdimensional space from one planet to another planet through these new age powers. It was, I know it might be a bit of a new eye-opener for people, but it is not so strange for a great piece of fantasy, a really remarkable piece of speculative fiction to come out
So the
of a
sequel
deep, deep
did-
personal spiritual life that an author has. And in Jim Henson's case, David Odell was glad to oblige. In J.R.R. Tolkien's case, that's why when I was on that train going to Comic-Con and I got approached by one of the showrunners of Rings of Power, it's the first thing that he asked me, what do you want to know about our show? And I said, I want to know that you are thematically hitting the metaphysics about what Tolkien was most interested in the build-out of The Lord of the Rings as a large thematic study of death and the pursuit of deathlessness. And that is exactly what Tolkien wanted to write Lord of the Rings all about. And I swear to you, there's a great deal of connection between an author and their spiritual life, even with Jim Henson's case in The Dark Crystal.
So did Age of Resistance deliver on that part of Henson's?
Very much so. Very, very much so.
So do you think those writers of Age of Resistance are up to the caliber that we want out of a Tolkien adaptation?
I sure do believe so. The proof is in that gold little Emmy on their shelf, and the fact that hundreds of thousands of fans around the world were completely, really enraptured in a place they hadn't visited since 1982. I mean, 40 years later, they managed to create, and a lot of credit goes to Louis Leterrier, who was the director. They didn't give the episodes
director.
Singular. They did not give any Dark Crystal episodes to a bunch of different hired guns. They let Louis Leterrier do all of it. He worked with the camera rig. He got the camera rig on
every
his
episode.
shoulders.
The important thing it was every episode. So it was a single thought. We have breaking news.
Single creative focus.
Varking in the chat room has just chimed in and said LBP stands for London Bio Packaging. The party was sponsored by a recycling cardboard packaging company, and so it is LBP stands for London Bio Packaging, and they did not put Rings of Power, ROP, or LOTR on any of the cups or anything. They put London Bio Packaging because everything was supposed to be sustainable and recyclable. So I commend you, Amazon, for doing that, and thank you, Varking. I told you that I would send whoever got me the answer something. So tell me what you want. I think I got some stuff here. I have a full screen pan and scan 4:3 edition 480p DVD set of Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers theatrical cut, the best that there could be. But I don't know if I want to give that up. So we have our answer.
That's funny. And you know what? I have to give Varking one of these. I have a gift for him too. You know what this is? This is one of the few remaining stickers of Ringer's Lord of the Fans from our documentary film. And this is a nice full-size sticker that you would put right over your Apple on the back of your laptop to cover
Cliff,
your Apple.
a comment from the chat room. Amazon is all like save the planet, but we can't pay our writers.
No small irony there. No
Uh,
small irony there.
so our report from France goes on to say that Alan Lee, John Howe, Oscar winner Richard Taylor, all those guys are Oscar winners actually. Mark Wilshire and Daniel Falconer are all involved in War of the Rohirrim.
Oh boy, that's great news. Daniel Falconer is the coolest. He's one of the best artists, and there's a lot of hardcore Tolkien fans who work at Weta Workshop. I think none of them are as much of a dyed in the wool ringer as Mr. Falconer. Really,
And so we've
he's
been
the fan of all fans.
Cliff,
He is.
everybody in the industry is talking about Arcane and Across the Spider Verse and
Mhm.
using a combination of 2D and 3D and CGI. So, according to the presentation in France, War of the Rohirrim is completely hand drawn
Mhm.
2D animation, just like Ralph Bakshi and Rankin Bass 40, 50 years ago.
And just like the great animators at the Disney studio back in the 30s,
That's
they had
right.
a separate ink and paint department. There was no digital work. Everybody was coloring and painting
Well,
on
there is a
those
digital
cells.
department. So we
Sure.
reported some Green Dragon gossip over the last couple weeks that Weta Digital were involved in the production of War of the Rohirrim, maybe for some of the battle scenes. Well, they clarified it here in France, and they say they are using detailed CG models from Weta, including the digital sets of Edoras and Rohan and Helm's Deep. They're using CG models of the characters and the layouts and the horses. And some of it comes from Weta Digital. Some of it they're building in Unreal, the gaming engine that they use on the Star Wars stages for Mandalorian.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
they would
Yes.
put all these CG assets into the game engine and then choose and then move a digital camera around to find the best shot for the action and then assemble a rough cut. So basically they have a totally complete movie right now, but it's partially CG, and right now they're going in and drawing every frame inspired by the CG. It is not rotoscope. They're not just tracing every character like Ralph Bakshi did with some of the Black Riders. Remember how
Actually, Ralph Bakshi rotoscoped the entire film, which was retraced by his animation department over live action reference footage.
that's right.
But it wasn't, I mean, that technique was actually innovated by Disney Studios in the 20s, and they used the same technique in Pinocchio. For example, there's some brief shots in the Pinocchio film which show Stromboli, his wagon, and he has a marionette wagon filled with his puppets, and who's captive inside? Our boy, Pinocchio. And the rotoscoping was actual photo reference of an Italian carriage moving down the cobblestone streets, and the animators put direct cells and line
And
drew
traced over
exactly over it,
so
line by line by line.
so they
It
want to
did happen
say
back then.
the Japanese animators say it's an interpretation and a translation of the CGI work, but
Mhm.
it's not complete tracing. But I'm sure a little bit of that is probably an animator's pride, because animators don't want to ever admit they're tracing.
Yes.
But I'm really excited because Weta just won the Oscar for Avatar: Way of the Water, which is now on Disney Plus and HBO Max. And I watched it this weekend, and it holds up in 2D on my television. The shots are great, so I'm excited for that. We got confirmation that Howard Shore is not composing the music, but it looks like they
Yes.
have
Yes.
licensed the original Howard Shore themes from The Two Towers and Return of the King. So you will hear the iconic Rohan music that you are familiar with. And
Wow. So we're going to get new music extrapolated from great themes, which is something that we see on shows like The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett, where they write all new music for the show, but sometimes you'll hear, oh, there's that John Williams theme
Right.
in the you'll hear it in the
And
distance.
so we
Yeah,
want to
okay.
welcome Stephen Gallagher, who was a sound editor and designer on the Hobbit movies. He is now in charge of music and composing for War of the Rohirrim. And we think that he just joined Discord today. So I keep telling you guys every week to join our Discord. We're pretty sure that Warner Brothers people, Weta people, and people involved in this movie are just hanging around, watching the conversations, and might be chiming in every once in a while. So please join the Discord, because we got some cool people in there that I won't reveal what their screen names are, but
No,
it's
you
pretty
better
fun.
not. You
So
better not
Cliff,
reveal all of our secret birds we have flying around.
well,
No.
speaking of secret birds, Philippa Boyens, after the panel ended,
Yes.
spotted our little spy, our little bird, and
Yeah,
said,
really?
"Are you with
Okay.
Torn? Can I talk to you?" And our friend was pulled aside, and Philippa wanted to share this, that in Carpenter's Tolkien biography, in Tolkien's college dorm room, he decorated his dorm room with Japanese prints.
Really?
And that was the starting point of the creative development of the look and feel of this. They started with what Tolkien had hanging in his college dorm room from Japan.
Really? That's fascinating. I did not know that. Wow.
So
Well,
check out what's his name, Humphrey Carpenter.
yeah, the Humphrey Carpenter biography. He's
Yeah.
the biographer who wrote the official, actual, the only one official full biography and life story of Tolkien was written by Mr. Carpenter. Yes.
All right, chat room. Do you want us to go into some of the spoiler stuff, some of the stories and the spoiler stuff, or should we save that for the end of the show?
About War of the Rohirrim?
About War of the Rohirrim, because we have some more to talk about. So while the chat room tells me how deep we should go on the spoilers, let me show you a clip. So I talked, because of the time zone difference, it's like 3 a.m. there now. So I was able to catch up with our little spy in France right after
So
the
funny.
panel. So this is her emotional, raw response to seeing the footage. So here's a quick little thing with our friend Hobbit Gay, who is in France, who is reporting all this for us. Let me see if I can bring that up. Enjoy, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
A couple glasses of champagne in. I'll be very ebullient about it.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Hi. How's it going in France?
Hi, bonjour from Annecy. I am here at the Annecy Animation Film Festival, seeing lots of beautiful animation, including the first look at the War of the Rohirrim.
And what was the mood in the room? What was the reactions?
It was very hyped. Annecy, there's a really cute tradition where the audience throws paper airplanes at the screen as they're like waiting for the guests to come out. And so there was like already this big room. Everyone was throwing airplanes and cheering when they got on stage. It was a very excited atmosphere. And yeah, it was, they gave us a lot of information about the way the movie is being made. This is very much a festival for animation professionals and animation students. So they got really into the nitty gritty of it. And everybody was just listening super hard and really, really curious to hear what they had to say.
Anything that surprised you, pleasantly surprised you?
I did not know that it was going to be so close to I did not know that it was in the same world as the live action films. So there was something really special. We saw a lot of concept art, especially of Medicels, the castle in Edoras, like the Great Hall. And that's a location we see a lot in the Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson films. And so getting to see exactly this familiar location where you're like, Gandalf like walks down this hall and they say Gandalf Stormcrow, and like to see that in a beautiful anime style, rendered and beautifully painted, that was really cool. That was really exciting. To just, it feels like a very, very seamless connection between the live action films and this anime film.
People want to know what does the animation feel like? Is it kind of does it feel like a certain anime style, or does it feel like Spider Verse, where it's like a combination of things?
To clarify, like we saw two scenes that were both partially animated. So we only saw a very little bit of finished animation. To me, it looks like a really classic anime. It definitely did not have the experimental vibe of Spider Verse. It was really classic, really beautifully rendered anime, with kind of very very classic proportions for the characters. I really appreciate they went to a Japanese studio. It is being developed with a renowned Japanese director, I think Kenji Kamiyana, who did Ghost in the Shell, and so they are really respecting the fact that it is a Japanese anime. So despite the fact that it is Middle Earth and it's very familiar to us, it also felt very very familiar as an anime film.
When I think of anime, I think of like One Piece, kind of cartoon Dragon Ball stuff. But is this more kind of like a hardcore kind of Gundam style anime?
I would agree with that. I'm not super super literate in anime, so I think Attack on Titan is something that I would say kind of like in terms of like the character proportions and like the acting and stuff. Kind of very grounded. I know that they were really interested in grounding it in reality. So I think like things like, I think One Piece is maybe a little more pushed, and this one feels a bit more grounded. Yeah, so but again, I'm not like super super literate in anime, but I think it will be a familiar style for a lot of people, and a lot of it looks, the concept art that has been released so far, that is what the film looks like a lot. Yeah.
So does it feel kind of like a John Howe, Alan Lee painting come to life?
A bit, yeah. It was really cool to see John Howe's name on. We saw some just like screens of like production stills and backgrounds and props, like the throne, and to just see John Howe's name kind of like on that as a production like file name, as someone coming from animation, I'm like, that's just so cool to see this incredible artist like folded into this production so seamlessly. So yeah, it looks, the backgrounds especially were what really made me emotional. I just thought it just looks so so beautiful.
And what did the whole crowd? Were people just in awe? Like what, or applauding, or smiles? Like what was the crowd like?
I think because everyone here is sort of in animation in the industry, there was very intense focus. People were really curious about the process of making the film because it is very complex. It is a story about the Rohirrim. It is a story about war. Already, the idea of people on horses. I think the biggest laugh of the day was when Kenji, the director, was like, "So we heard about the story, and then we asked, so how many horses do you want us to draw?" Because horses are just notoriously difficult to draw and animate, and this entire story, like, it's horses everywhere. So I think that was the biggest laugh, was a lot of people kind of having this knowing, like, oh yes, it is hard to draw horses. Yeah, but I think, yeah, people were really interested. I think there are definitely some like hardcore fans in the audience. Philippa Boyan said that there might be some familiar characters from the films, so everybody was like, who could it be? Gandalf, Saruman, we don't know. That was exciting. So yeah, but honestly, it was a very intense, everyone was just very very focused on the talk.
So you saw, so they showed two scenes. Any idea of like where in the movie they fit, like end of the first act and intro?
They felt like that, like early scenes. I think that we saw the very opening of the film, because it sort of started with a voiceover by the incomparable Miranda Otto, talking about stories and talking about, there's this story that hasn't been told, but we tell it among our people. And it started with, the map of Middle Earth, and then kind of moving into Rohan. So that was probably the beginning. And then there was another one that felt like it was kind of early in the film as well. And then we saw just little snippets of, they had sort of a, what you would call a sizzle reel, of just like tiny, very quick clips of finished animation. So we saw a little bit of that, and that was cool. Saw some very cool action scenes, but again, so fast that you barely could piece together what it was about. So I'm still left kind of curious about what the movie is going to be. I don't feel like I've gotten many spoilers at all.
Did you get to hear Brian Cox as Helm Hammerhand?
Yes.
And
everyone is excited. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like when the cast list was announced, there was definitely a murmur. Yeah. No, I thought he was great. He's Succession, right? He's the dad in Succession. Yeah. So he's kind of stepping into another patriarch role.
I'm so excited. And how was it hearing Howard Shore's Rohan music in a new context?
That was really beautiful. That was very exciting to kind of just realize, like, okay, they are using this beautiful theme. I mean, the Rohan theme is one of my favorite bits in the movie, like in that score. So getting to hear that, we saw another scene where Helm Hammerhand is like speaking to like his court, I think. And like he comes out and he's so kingly, and it's Brian Cox voicing him, and like the Rohirrim music swells, and you're just like, all right, yes, we are doing this. We are embedding in Rohan culture and finding out what it's all about. It's exciting.
You mentioned there's monster on monster action. Do we have any idea what the monsters are?
I don't. I saw some concept art of Oliphants. So those are the only creatures that I saw.
Okay.
So perhaps Oliphants battling each other. I saw Isengard. I'm not sure. I'm not like super familiar with the story, so I'm not sure if there are orcs in it or not. But yeah, I know that Jason DeMarco, who is the creative exec from Warner Brothers, specifically was like interested in having some monster fights.
All right, scale of 1 to 10, what's your hype level?
Good question. I think my hype level is at like an 8. But that is because I'm a very particular Lord of the Rings fan. So I think like I try not to get too excited about these things because I don't want to get too disappointed. But the 8 points come from being so excited to see a continuation of these films that I love, and to see it in this medium that I love so much. I think that no matter what, like I think I have to hold back. I have to hold back my 2 points out of 10 just because I don't know as much about the characters of the story. But I'm really visually, it looks really stunningly beautiful, and like something that will. I just think Middle Earth and animation go so well together, especially 2D animation, and so I found it really exciting. It made me really happy to see how much it felt like a peek into Middle Earth.
Feels like Tolkien.
Yeah, that was something that Philippa Boyens was talking about. Her daughter Phoebe, I don't know her last name, maybe Phoebe Boyens. Is a writer on it, and she was just talking about how Phoebe like literally grew up on the sets, and kind of just like has the language. Like she just, and I think that a lot of us who grew up with Lord of the Rings when we were very young have that too, where it's just like there's a certain language and a certain rhythm to Tolkien's storytelling and the way that Tolkien's characters speak. And so we got very, very little dialogue, so I can't like suss that out for sure, but the vibes of the music and the visuals were giving me Tolkien. Yeah.
All right, this is so good. Thanks for calling in all the way from France.
I'm happy. So happy to.
We're so excited, and we'll catch up with you when you're back in LA.
All right, thank you. Yeah, it's very exciting. I hope that everyone is getting stoked because it seems like it is a true labor of love, and a lot of people really putting so much time and care into it.
All right, that is super exciting, isn't it, folks? Let me look at this. This is one of the photos that was earlier released of the Mumakil attacking Edoras. Cliff, anything stand out from what you just heard from the Onset report?
Yes, actually, what stands out for me is the fact that they are willing to admit up front that they've got a different composer. That really stands out for me, that Howard Shore's not coming back to score the entire film. The other big standout surprise is this the kind of techniques that have evolved over time for hand-drawn animation is just endlessly fascinating to me. And I learned some interesting bits about the technical approach, as you were just discussing earlier in the show. So the idea of using previs, aggressively using pre-visualization tools, it really helps them save money on expensive animation. So I think that's pretty cool, actually. All of it's very cool. I'm excited to see Molly being excited about this. It's awesome. Really awesome.
She says they hinted at a character we recognize in another report from a French website called cloneweb.net. This is a loose translation, an AI translation, if you will. Here's another picture. We saw we saw a scene where Hera feeds the eagles, a dialogue sequence in Edoras, in a well-known setting, and a very cut montage of surprisingly gory action. We saw various conceptual drawings highlight the Muma kill, the giant elephants, as well as sets where the features of How and Lee were respected in micro detail. We also saw Orthanc with a camp at its foot and the Tower of Isengard and many planes. Cliff.
Wow.
Does that mean Sauron is in Isengard at the time of this movie?
No. No.
When does Saruman take Saruman?
You just said Sauron, so I'm going to be like, wait a minute, I got to check your head.
Yeah.
We need to check your head at the door, okay?
Okay, as someone who hadn't read the books, when the movies first came out, I walked out of Fellowship of the Ring completely confused because I thought Sauron and Saruman were the same thing, same dude. They just nicknamed him. I thought Sauron was a short nickname for Saruman.
Nope. Do you know why? That's why the studio made Ralph Bakshi change the pronunciation of the character to Aruman without the S.
And
they started calling him Aruman in the film.
I kind of agree
of
with
response.
The studio notes because as a dumb movie watcher, I'm telling you, for at least a year or two, I did not know the difference between Saruman and Sauron. I got them confused, and I just did it again 20 years later.
You're hilarious. You are too funny right now.
All right,
Come on.
Does this mean
this is a masterpiece of literature? You're going to tell me you can't tell the difference between...
I want a masterpiece of cinema. Keep your books.
How about the difference between 3 syllables and 2 syllables? Can you manage that?
War of the Rohirrim has Saruman.
Rohirrim has 3 syllables.
Does Isengard confirm Saruman?
No, not unless they decide, because the Dunlendings, the people who live in Dunland, were in control of Isengard at the time. And there's probably a resentment that can be built because at that point in the story, maybe they do want to bring Saruman at the end. It'd be kind of maybe cool and appropriate to see that Gondor gave all the lands to Rohan, and they gave the actual Vale of Isengard and the Circle of Isengard and the Tower of Orthanc, which is within the Circle of Isengard. They gave that not to the Dunlendings. They got short shrift. They got the short end of that deal, and Gondor gave it to Saruman. Maybe that could be used to show why the Dunlendings are so resentful, and they end up being used by Saruman in the Battle of Helm's Deep against Rohan.
I tell you, one of the most exciting things that I heard from the report in France is hearing that the animation is most alike to Attack on Titan. Yep. Attack on Titan is one of the best anime and most successful recent anime series of the last 5 to 10 years. I know some of our more anime aficionados in our Discord would disagree with me, but I love Attack on Titan. I
It's a
love that
spectacular show.
it's a
Yeah, that's
spectacular
always
show,
been
and it looks
spectacular. Yeah.
great, and it's easy
Yeah.
to follow, and I love the character designs. So if
Mhm.
that's what they're going for, this kind of like more realism, dark and gritty realism of Attack on Titan versus the bubblegum pop of Dragon Ball and Pokemon and One Piece, I'm all
Mhm.
in.
Do you
Like
know
that.
what? To answer your question, Orion's Angel, if they're going to use Miranda Otto as a voiceover talent, she is going to be sharing the story going back in time. So she's not being presented as a character who is alive during the time of Helm Hammerhand. But if she is the voiceover, she's going to be that once upon a time in the misty past of Rohan, this is what happened. And here's the story of our shield maiden. And here's why her name was not recorded in the histories. And so on and so on.
That
So
is a
then,
huge opening line. The movie opens with the line,
yeah,
"She is not named in the old tales."
yeah, intriguing, isn't it?
Cliff, that's the opening line to the movie. You wouldn't
Yep.
know about this person because she is not named in the old tales.
Yeah, isn't that intriguing?
Does,
Very intriguing approach.
is that
Yeah.
is that a meta commentary, Cliff? Is that a meta commentary to the fanboys that will scream, you know, this movie is a woman and it's woke and this isn't what Tolkien wrote and Tolkien only wrote about men?
If I hear that word used one more time in an intellectually dishonest way, I think I might pull my hair out. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Too late for that, kids. But
Um,
no, come on. The idea of having an entire feature film explore this really dark and weird type of ghost story. It is so creepy and interesting, and it is so, do you know what it feels like? When we're deep in the Rohan stuff, it feels like Beowulf. Remember Beowulf? And you may or may not have seen the animated version of Beowulf, um, that was produced by Who Framed Roger Rabbit director Bob Zemeckis.
yeah.
You may have not seen it, but everything that is Anglo-Saxon and all that specific Grendel and Beowulf and Grendel's mother and all that Beowulf stuff is so Anglo-Saxon in its linguistic history and its cultural history. And Tolkien was directly inspired and let the men and women of Rohan be directly inspired by this big Anglo-Saxon kick. So this whole story of War of the Rohirrim is starting to really get me in the mood for that Beowulf stuff. I love the
All
original.
right, there's
I love
giant
the original,
eagles
and I
in the
love the movie,
opening
too.
shot. Do you want the eagles to talk in
Yep.
this?
Yep. I want
Yeah.
all the eagles to talk all the bloody time. Yes.
Do you
Yes.
think that's what animation can allow for?
Yes. It sure did. The eagles are speaking in the Rankin and Bass animated Hobbit film. And you know, the Lord of the Eagles says something that Professor Tolkien never wrote. Because Bilbo is surprised that Bilbo and Thorin and all the dwarves have been rescued from the burning fire on the side of the mountain after they escaped from the goblin town. But the eagles rescue them. Much to Bilbo's surprise, Gandalf has a past history and a friendship with Gwahir, the Wind Lord. So in the Hobbit film, this is the dialogue, word for word. I remember it like it was yesterday. Here's the dialogue of Gwahir, the Wind Lord, as he explains himself and his entire background with Gandalf. He says, I have not forgotten the arrow that brought me down so many years ago. I have not forgotten the wizard who found me and healed my wounds. That's it. And then he says, farewell wherever you fare, for your Ares receive you at the journey's end. And he flies away, and we never have another word with the great Lord of the Eagles. But what he does say brings everything into focus. And you're like, okay, now you understand that Gandalf has had quite a few interesting misadventures around Middle-earth long before he pulled Bilbo into this unexpected journey. So, yeah, I'm all about eagles talking because it will enrich their relationships with other characters. They can spread news, gossip from one nation to another nation. They can help leaders of Rohan make military decisions. If they make friends with the eagles, you know, the eagles can help them. You never know. So please, yes, you're in a world of animation. You might as well have the birds talk. Please. Yes. Thank
Before
you.
we get to the big spoilers of it, I just wanted to give a quick description. Again, Warner Brothers has not released the trailer. They said on stage, this is official. They are not going to release the footage that was shown at Annecy Film Festival today. They are not going to release the footage. The soonest we could possibly see a trailer or any footage, it possibly could be Comic-Con, but we don't have any confirmation. Here are the descriptions of the main character, Hera, or Hera, or Hera. I don't know how they pronounce it until I see the footage myself. She reads very 90s anime girl. So think of anime girl with Attack on Titan. Maybe not as extreme as some of those anime girls from the 90s. Kind of reminds me of the Rankin Bass Eowyn. She has red hair in a messy braid, leather armor, and a sword. We also see designs of her in formal dress. They describe her as vulnerable and wild, a tomboy type character. She has a growth in the film, maybe tied to needing to lead her people in a time of chaos. Philippa loves, the producer, Philippa Boyens, loves that her hair is never perfect in the movie.
Guess what? Take a look at this. I'm going to send this to you right here, Justin.
Sure.
Okay.
And while he's sending that, I'll describe Wolf. He is the other main character. He's the main antagonist. I think he's a wildman. He's a big, muscly dude with long hair, scruffy, an axe, and furs, and a ragged cloak, and a scar over one eye. They solicited a lot of ideas from the female staff in the studio. The note they got was, he does bad things, so make him beautiful.
All right. I just sent you a link so you can look. That is really, really cool. This is sounding so great. Take a look at Eowyn. This is the original Japanese anime that was produced by Rankin and Bass. And this is Eowyn. I sent it to you, Justin, so you can pull up that and you can take a look at how they drew the character design for Eowyn, the way that she appeared in this film, which I believe was 1984 or 85. No, actually 80. It came out literally 1980.
Why you send me a link? Just tell me to search for something. Rankin Bass Eowyn.
Does that? Rankin Bass Return of the King Eowyn are the search terms. And you'll see a really, really delightful Eowyn design. Really great. We can show the folks at home.
Let's see if we can make this bigger.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, these are all VHS rips, so we can't really make it bigger.
There's another good one. With her sword creating that flash where she's holding her shield in her left hand. Yep.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
There you go. That's Eowyn, ladies and gentlemen. That is our first anime Eowyn. Yeah, that's the one.
So
that's one of my. That is one of my favorite images of her. That is one of my favorite images of Eowyn. So you guys take a close look at this and think, holy cow, this animation design was created by the animators who went to work with Miyazaki and Takahata. They left Topcraft. That was their studio, Topcraft. And then they went to work for the newly formed Studio Ghibli. And this is what Lord of the Rings looks like when it is an anime design, a real traditional anime design.
All right, so imagine that with red hair and braids and messy. So Cliff, we the One Ring got an interview, a text interview with Philippa a couple months ago, and I wanted to bring that up. Demosthenes wanted wanted us to bring it up. Let me see if I can bring it up here. Philippa says, you get to go and visit things you know from the books. Now we know that she's talking about Edoras and Isengard. Fans of the film will get to see, Edoras besieged. It's quite a shocking moment, because we didn't see that in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. Per the book, one of Helm Hammerhand's sons meets a grim end at Edoras, and I think it's likely this will prove a pivotal moment for Helm himself. He's a hard man for sure and becomes even harder by the end of his life. But why is Helm like that? So we have confirmation that Philippa Boyens says you will see Edoras besiege. The scoop, the spoiler, I'm going to say, is Edoras, according to our information, is besieged at the end of the first act, early in the movie.
Ooh.
Early in the movie, Edoras is destroyed and people die. And so the first act is action-packed, sets that up, and then at the end of the first act, Edoras is destroyed, the people of Rohan have lost their home, and people have lost their family members, and Helm has lost a son, and now the real story begins, the real hero's journey that Hera has to come to terms with.
Yes.
Will she step up? Philippa Boyens continues. There's a moment in the film which is incredibly gut-wrenching and powerful, where Wolf commits himself to a course of action he cannot turn away from. And once he does, the story darkens. Let's go back to our report today. Wolf is the main antagonist. He does bad things, and he looks beautiful. He is a big, muscly dude with long hair, scruffy, an axe and furs and ragged cloak. This description reminds me of the Snow People, the Snow King in Wakanda.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't it? Mbata,
Yes.
I believe his name. I believe King Mbata, I think is his name. The big Snow King. Let me see if I can pull up a picture. So this is from a few months ago. There's a moment in this film where this incredibly gut-wrenching and powerful, where Wolf, the big, strong, fur-laden brute, commits himself to a course of action he cannot turn away from. And once he does that, the story darkens. And I believe Demosthenes is considering another post in the coming weeks. Maybe he's talking about bringing the Corsairs of Umbar, some underhanded deal with the mysterious Lord Frigate character, who we've heard so little about. Does it have to do with the ghost story? What's her name? Philip. The writers also say there is a ghost story and a surreal story within this movie that is suited to the medium of animation.
Wow. Okay.
So, Cliff, we're going supernatural with this. A ghost story, a big brute who makes a dark decision.
Yep.
What
Yes,
could all
indeed.
this mean?
Why don't you read the appendices at the back of the book? Bloody
Well-
hell. Bloody hell.
Now I don't want to be spoiled. Well, now I don't want to be spoiled. I just want to see the movie. Cliff, but there's a question in the chat. You talk about the appendices. Is the story of Rohan in the Nature of Middle Earth or other books? Where else can they read about the history of Rohan? It's not in the Silmarillion.
No, not at all. The real good stuff about Rohan is in the appendices at the back of Return of the King.
So just the appendices, not home. What is it? History of Middle Earth?
Let me see. I think there's some good stuff in Unfinished Tales. Let me look this up.
A
I
question
think
from the
there's some
chat
stuff
room.
in Unfinished Tales.
Unfinished Tales. Yeah, check that out. Cliff,
Yeah, I think it does
chat-
have some stuff.
Question from the chat room. Isn't Wolf the leader that Helm Hammerhand humiliates before heading off into the deep? This is
Yes, I
quite
think so.
possible.
Yes, I think so. Okay, let's take a look here. Part one, first age, second age.
Durin the Seventh says, the description of Hera reminds me of Merida from the movie Brave.
Yeah, Brave.
Disney Pixar's Brave.
There is some material in part 3 of Unfinished Tales concerning Kirion and Eorl and the friendship of Gondor and Rohan. So there is some stuff in there.
But for the most part, let's be clear.
Yes.
Warner Brothers only has rights to Lord of the Rings and its appendices.
That is true.
Not the Unfinished Tales. So
that is
Cliff
true.
is correct. Cliff is correct. If you want to know more, if you want to read a little bit about the history of Rohan, start at the appendices of Return of the King.
Yes.
Cliff.
Yes, indeed. Agreed with that.
Another big piece of news, folks. This is huge. It was confirmed.
Ooh, here it comes. Big news.
It was confirmed that War of the Rohirrim is one of the longest animated films in Western movie history at 2 hours and 10 minutes. That is just 10 minutes short of the super long Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in cinemas now.
5-minute difference, actually.
5-minute difference.
Yes.
Everybody was talking about how in the world could Across the Spider-Verse be so long at 2 hours and 15 or 2 hours and 20 minutes.
That doesn't... Oh, come on, people. You all sit through Lord of the Rings movies and Harry Potter movies that are way, way, way longer than that.
So
Good heavens.
I'm carefully qualifying this as a Western animated film. Yes, it's an anime film, but the voices are recorded in English first. This is meant to be shown worldwide, America, all English-speaking theatrical distribution countries. This is a Western movie animated in Japan. So that makes it one of the longest animated films ever produced. If you ignore the entire anime, the Japanese-only anime history, Japanese and Korean anime industry right now,
yes.
They're crushing it. They're crushing it at the box office. And they have super long animated movies. But as far as Western animation, 2 hours and 10 minutes makes this one of the longest animated movies of all time. Cliff, any chance there's an extended edition of War of the Rohirrim?
No, that's too expensive to make. That's too expensive to make. Do you know why? They don't cut entire things out of, an animated film. It's so expensive to make. They don't cut things out. And, well, sometimes they do. Sometimes, I have to be honest, there are moments where they restructure a little bit of the story beats. And sometimes they edit some things out. But when those things are edited out, they're not anywhere near final production. They're not at the level of being final artwork and final
Are you
polish.
ready for a 2 hour and 10 minute movie? Animated movie?
I just watched Across the Spider-Verse and I'm going to go back and see it again.
I think this is as long as Ralph Bakshi's animated Lord of the Rings.
His Lord of the Rings film is exactly 2 hours long, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. Here we go. Let's take a look. The runtime on that film is, believe it or not, 133 minutes. So that's 2 hours and 13 minutes long. So why is that the talk of the town? It's not like, all right, I know we're used to having...
Is that what Lord of the Rings demands?
Yes. I know we're used to a lot of popular commercial animation product in this country, and it's always clocked in at less than 90 minutes. I understand that. But yeah, Ralph's film was 133. Believe it or not, that's 2 hours and 13 minutes long. Wow.
Huh.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And so is our audience. Our audience is going to be like, yes, I'm eating it up. Give me more, please. That'd be great.
So again, I want to show you this. This is, imagine this with red hair and an anime style, or a more modernized anime style. This is Eowyn from Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings. Imagine this with red hair, and we're looking at Hera, the heroine, the main character of War of the Rohirrim, and then what came to mind. Oh, what happened to it?
How exciting!
It's so exciting, and then we don't have any pictures of the main bad guy, but this is what the description looks like. M'Baku from Wakanda Forever. Imagine he is described. The main bad guy in War of the Rohirrim is described as a big, beefy, burly dude with coats and furs and an axe and just a huge, huge presence.
Yes.
Who has to make a dark decision. We don't know what he looks like yet, but that if you recognize M'Baku from Wakanda, from Black Panther, that is as close as we'll get. So that's exciting. 2 hours and 10 minutes, Cliff.
How exciting!
They're not cheapening out on making an animated Lord of the Rings, are they?
No, they're not. I'm really glad that they're going for it. This is some really great news. Really great news, isn't it?
It's
such
very
an exciting
good.
time to see Tolkien come back full circle to hand-drawn anime by really talented Japanese artists, just like we had in the late 70s and the early 80s, is fantastic.
And I love that the chat room is totally on board with a super long animated Lord of the Rings movie. So if you're watching Warner Brothers, Philippa, Steven, Jason, if you're watching our show and our podcasts, everything we're hearing is great. Keep up the good work.
Yep.
Now, exciting. Cliff, let's talk about release dates. Now, according to everybody in France, they wanted to remind everybody that it'll be out next April 12th, 2024. Now, the comments made by the Japanese animation director today has some fans concerned that they're not close to being done. And 10 months is not enough time to animate a 2-hour, 10-minute movie. So I wanted to clear something up here. First off, Disney just announced that they moved all their Star Wars and Pixar and Marvel movies away from April and May of next year. So Rohirrim doesn't have any competition. Secondly, the movie is already animated in CGI, and the artists are just animating away. And we have heard today, according to folks on our Discord, the animation house is hiring like mad. If you know anyone in Japan that has skill with a pencil or pen or ink and paint, you can get a job animating Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim right now. If you live anywhere in the world, if you're an artist, an animator, if you're in college, if you're just getting out of college, if you're looking for your big break, if you can make it to Japan, start looking now on the internet for jobs at the studio that's animating War of the Rohirrim. They are hiring animators right now to get this done. We have heard from everybody involved that the date is locked and the show, the movie, must be delivered. There have been some whispers that they won't make it after today's announcement where they didn't show any footage. Well, Cliff, you and I both know that studios like to hold footage until the right time. And I expect at Comic-Con in 1 month's time, we will get a fully animated trailer with everything they didn't show today.
Do you know how different that is from Studio Ghibli's approach to Miyazaki's final film? It will be released with no promotional materials, no trailer, no marketing, no promotional anything, nothing. So imagine the difference. You and I can sit here and be all like, "Oh my gosh, we're so anxious and antsy to get down to Comic-Con so we can see this War of the Rohirrim stuff." While the other single most anticipated film in Japan this year, the most anticipated film in the country, will be released without any trailer or any marketing at all, which is a very interesting approach.
Right,
So,
and with a trailer, again, this is animation, so they have to choose what to animate to put in the trailer. It's not like there's a big bucket of footage that's completed that they can edit into a trailer. They have to choose from the animatics what to animate first so they can put the trailer together. So I'm confident, having done a little work in animation, I'm feeling good that this movie will deliver in 10 months in April. It'll be down to the wire, but I think they can get it done with the right amount of people drawing the right amount of things, especially if the picture is locked when it comes to the story, and it sounds like it is. There are voice re-recording sessions scheduled for November and December, which is normal for an animated film. So again, that's like 5 months. That still gives the movie an extra 5 months to really dial in the animation. There were whispers this week, Cliff, that Rings of Power, because of their wrap party this last Friday, that Rings of Power might be done by the spring of next year. And so someone seemed to start a rumor that Rings of Power might want to be released in February, March, or April of next year. But the problem is, we know, and we've been reporting this for 2 years now, Warner Brothers and Amazon have a polite agreement, probably written in stone on a contract, not to compete with each other's Lord of the Rings properties in the marketplace at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed.
So you cannot. They have agreed not to cross the streams. So now, Warner Brothers has put the hammer down on April for Rohirrim, which means that
next year?
It is
You mean
April of next
2024?
year.
2024.
So,
okay.
Because Warner Brothers reinforced that date numerous times today, that means that Amazon, even if they wanted to, cannot and should not release Rings of Power Season 2 anywhere close to April or before. Because that is the marketing window for Rohirrim.
Indeed.
So
okay.
I would say I would expect to see a Rohirrim Super Bowl commercial in February, and then 2 months later, it's in theaters. So February, March, April. So Super Bowl commercial, my prediction, Super Bowl commercial for Rohirrim, and then it's in theaters. And I don't think Rings of Power will be released before. But if Warner Brothers gets up against a wall and says we need more time to finish the animation, they can possibly make a deal with Amazon where Rohirrim releases later in the year and Rings of Power comes out in April. And one of the reasons that Rings of Power, the theory is Rings of Power wants to be released in earlier next year, is because the Emmy Awards cutoff is in June.
Oh, that's right. Emmy Awards. That's right.
So people think that Amazon doesn't want to go up against Game of Thrones again and have them both on the air at the same time. I think it's less than that. I think Amazon wants Emmy Award consideration for Season 2 of Rings of Power. So there is a possibility that they are going to rush Season 2 of Rings of Power, try to get it on the air, but they're going to have to negotiate with Warner Brothers to not cross the streams in that window. Duran in the chat room wants to know, how long did Rings of Power post-production take? It took, let me see, Rings of Power Season 1 wrapped in August, and they delivered at the end of May. So August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. April, May. So 11 months of post-production and CGI work. We expect that season 2 has a lot more CGI work because there are actual real big battles happening. Not this silly little straw huts on fire stuff that we saw in season 1, but actual real big scale Fall of Aragion battles are happening in season 2. So we anticipate that there's a lot more CGI going on. So last time it took 11 months. Maybe they've speeded up, but I don't anticipate that Rings of Power should be done. Also, there should be some reshoots scheduled by the end of the year in case like they realize something's not working. Schedule a reshoot some script stuff. I don't know if they would want to do that. So the question is, Warner Brothers holds the April 12th date. We get Rohirrim, and Rings of Power has to wait until after the Emmy Awards nominations are out. Or Warner Brothers is backed up against the wall. They need more time. They negotiate with Amazon to say, hey, let's switch dates. What if Rohirrim comes out in September and Rings of Power comes out in April, and everybody wins. So right now...
Intriguing. Okay. Yes.
It's exciting.
Yes.
So
I get this. I'm starting to see conceptually how the whole thing will start playing forward.
Cliff, did we ever
how interesting that they do this dance against each other. I mean, let's just take a look at that for a second. That they're doing this, we're not going to step on your toes while you're releasing your stuff. This kind of dance they're doing. It's interesting.
This is the unique position that the Lord of the Rings rights are in, because no other studio has shared rights. I mean, you could argue that Spider-Man and Marvel are kind of at competing studios, but they have an agreement to work together.
And they do. And they do very carefully. They very, very carefully work everything out together. It's fascinating. Well, there's more news about, I just saw this appear in the Hollywood Reporter today. Rings of Power intellectual property owner Embracer Group planning layoffs, sale, or closure of gaming studios amid corporate restructuring. You just saw this too yourself, didn't you, today?
That's right.
Yep. So, I mean, this is a sign of that split dynamic between one company having these rights and the other company, Prime Video, having those television rights, while Warner Brothers Discovery has those film rights. While the Embracer Group is trying to restructure itself for making theme parks and video games.
I think there were a lot of headlines that were blaming Lord of the Rings, but they kind of missed the forest through the trees. Embracer is canceling almost all other projects in favor of more Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
On their investor call today, which I have a clip, but I don't know if I want to play it because it's like 5 minutes long. But basically, the executives at Embracer Group said, we own Lord of the Rings now. Why are we wasting time making a bunch of indie games and a bunch of other games that don't have a lot of affinity IP that no one knows? Why are we making all this stuff over here when we own Lord of the Rings? Why don't we just cancel all this other stuff and put all of our energies into making great Lord of the Rings things?
I agree with that approach.
To me, that's the right answer. To me, that's the right answer. If you have to make the hard cuts, and you're looking at money as an issue right now, you have to say, all right, where can we make the most money, and where can we do the best by the franchises that we have? And to be clear, Embracer has the Tomb Raider franchise, and they're going all in. Nobody's getting fired from Tomb Raider. Nobody's getting fired from Lord of the Rings. So they're canceling everything else to go into more Lord of the Rings. That's exciting to me as a fan. As a Lord of the Rings fan, I'm getting more attention. So why? The question is, Cliff, why do they have to make these choices? Well, it turns out that just last week, and I believe we reported this a little bit, I don't know, Embracer Group stock dropped 40%. 40% last week.
Was
Why
that because
did it
of
do
the
that?
Gollum game? Was that because of the
No.
failure of the Gollum video game?
Here's the
No.
thing.
It wasn't tied to that singularly.
It was
must have
not
been...
tied to Gollum Game. Again, Gollum Game was made before Embracer took over. It says
Okay.
Embracer was about to embark on an industry mega deal of $2 billion. Embracer had a deal on the table. And here's the quote, Cliff, from last week. All documentation was finalized and ready to go as of yesterday. We sent all the contracts over to the other company. And late last night, they told us that they're not going to do the deal.
Wow.
This deal took 7 months to negotiate. It was worth $2 billion. 7 months, $2 billion. It was a 6-year contract. So $300 million a year going to Embracer. I'll tell you who I think it is in a minute. But they were prepared. They had all the lawyers, did all the contracts. I'm telling you guys, you don't pay lawyers to draft up a $2 billion deal.
Right.
Unless you're absolutely certain all you need to do is get it signed. And at the last second, all the documentation was finalized and ready to go as of yesterday. And then late last night, we received a negative outcome from the counterparty. So a $2 billion deal got canceled at the last minute out of shock and surprise. No one seems to know. This is in Forbes. No one seems to know who this deal was supposed to be for. Embracer owns Borderlands. They own Crystal Dynamics and Eidos and Square Enix, Deus Ex, Thief, Legacy of Kain, Tomb Raider, and of course, Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
So they own Tomb Raider and Lord of the Rings and Deus Ex and all these things. They had a $2 billion gaming deal, and that fell through. That is the only reason that their stock dropped, because they lost a $2 billion 6-year deal. So that led to having to trim the company, because suddenly $2 billion that they were expecting to come in suddenly vanished, and they did not expect it. So that's what happened. So by losing that money, Embracer has said, all right, what do we focus on then? Like, do we sell Lord of the Rings? What do we do? They've decided, get rid of everything else, because we're in the Lord of the Rings business. That's it.
Really?
And we reported a few weeks ago that Embracer has sold the online open world rights to Lord of the Rings to Amazon. Amazon is making an online MMO RPG set in the Third Age in an exclusive deal with Embracer. So that is happening. Embracer has sold the MMO rights to Amazon. Embracer has sold the movie rights back to Warner Brothers on a new deal. So Embracer already has money coming in on Lord of the Rings, and it's just they had this big $2 billion deal, and it got canceled. People on, of course, Twitter wanted to say, oh, that Gollum game sucked, and it was a bomb, so, of course, Embracer had to... Look, Embracer had nothing to do with Gollum. Embracer just came on the scene a few months ago. Like, the Gollum game was developed before Embracer. Like, Embracer gets paid on every game that's sold of Gollum. So, you know, Gollum had nothing to do with the cutbacks. In fact, Gollum just reinforced to Embracer that they need to take control.
Indeed.
So the big quote that everybody's scared of is, we know we need to be exploiting Lord of the Rings in a very significant fashion. That's what they said on their earnings call today. We know we need to be exploiting Lord of the Rings in a very significant fashion.
Yes.
That's kind of music to my ears. I mean, some people on Twitter, like Gary Whitta, who is the screenwriter of Rogue One, says, People are already feeling Star Wars and Marvel stretching at the seams. I suspect there's less tolerance for exploiting a literary treasure like Lord of
Mm-hmm.
the Rings into the
Mm-hmm.
ground. Gollum game was a canary in the coal mine,
Yes.
but no lessons will be learned. Cliff, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I very much do agree with that.
What do you mean?
Yes,
What?
indeed.
You don't want more Lord of the Rings?
Wait a minute. But that was the canary in the coal mine? That's the part I'm agreeing with. Are you kidding?
Yeah, but do you agree with Oscar-winning screenwriter Gary Whitta that Star Wars and Marvel are already stretched at the seams, and there's less tolerance for exploiting a literary treasure like Lord of the Rings?
Yes, there is, because you can get a TV show like Book of Boba Fett, and then one like Andor, and then get a TV show, a mini series like Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they are all stretching Star Wars a bit, and people are noticing, and that is the talk, that some of it is really great, and some of it is middling, and some of it is less than middling or whatever. So, yeah, that's the thing you want to avoid, is this oversaturation of Tolkien adaptations.
Do you
Really.
think there's less tolerance from Tolkien fandom for scraping too much butter over a little? Wait, no.
Scraping not enough butter over too much bread. And yes, there's a noticeable and specific look. Yes, the tolerance is noticeable and lesser than in other fandoms, but you know, you you can afford to expand and keep expanding Star Wars. You can afford to do that because there's a lot more room, I guess, for that, but not in Arda. I don't know if the same dynamism applies here.
So you don't want to see something like this, a phase one of Embracer's Lord of the Rings license, Lord of the Rings Gandalf Origins, Shadow of the Hobbit, Tom and Goldberry with Windlemania,
Oh
Aragorn, The
gosh.
Rise of Strider.
Look at that. Who made that? Who made this? This is great. This bizarre little graphic represents what a lot of fans fear and what a lot of fans really want.
You
But
don't
no,
want
come
that?
on.
I want that.
No.
You don't want that.
No. No, I do not want this. This kind of thing going on. Now, look at the way that the chat is talking to us now. Look at the way the people in the chat are responding to that. No, they're doing the whole Darth Vader in Revenge of the Sith. No. Okay.
Why don't you want that? Why don't you want that?
Because I understand that this material is not coming from a source of some 1970s and early 80s movies. Don't you get it? The source of this is a literary masterpiece, not some vintage films that you can expand and expand and expand
But that's what
creatively
Tolkien
upon.
wanted. He said other minds and hands wielding paint and drama, movie making, game making, to build upon the foundations and the pillars that he created.
Right,
Tolkien wanted this expansion.
but you're always forgetting the part where when Professor Tolkien said that in his letters, he said that was a youthful and brazen and kind of, he used the word absurd. He said that was an absurd, overreaching concept. And he thought maybe that was too ambitious at first. He said, hopefully, that would have been the great thing. But, I mean, it can't always be that way. Look, the literary source that is Arda, all the tales of Arda that Tolkien wrote, they are finite in scope. There's only so much stuff that he wrote. They are, I got to say this again, but I want to be more careful in my choice of words. They are finite in scope, even though they seem to be almost limitless in history, a history that crosses thousands and thousands and thousands of years. But still, what he created, he didn't want to go and branch much farther, even when it was time for him to consider The Return of the Shadow. And that would have been his sequel to The Lord of the Rings. And when Professor Tolkien considered it, he tried to write some stuff. There was some initial story bits and some paragraphs, and I think a couple of chapters. Some of this stuff is in the history of Middle Earth. You can see what Christopher Tolkien presented, the dawn of the new shadow, the shadow returning. And he abandoned the idea. Even Professor Tolkien abandoned the idea of himself expanding and expanding into the fourth age.
But he encouraged other minds. It wasn't for him, but he wanted the idea other minds.
Because it wasn't working the way that he thought it would, and it wasn't working out.
For him and from him, but he encouraged other minds to do what he couldn't. Expand the story. Because he told the story he wanted to tell in this world. That's how I read that. Is that comment reinforces... It's kind of self-deprecating, is that he cannot complete the task.
Maybe, but I think he was dissatisfied with the way that the Return of the Shadow was working. And, I'm saying if he had the instincts to stop at a certain point and not keep expanding and expanding, then the corporate, overlords who are now holding this intellectual property should also be very wise to understand that instinct. The author had the instinct to stop at a certain point. And I think, I think they should too.
So you don't like this idea of...
Otaku Senpai says the new shadow only comes to about 16 pages.
So do you agree with Gary Whitta? And again, folks, Gary Whitta is... BAFTA award-winning screenwriter and author of Rogue One, The Book of Eli, The Walking Dead, Star Wars Rebels, and a ton of stuff. A highly respected writer who's currently striking. Do you agree that he says they're way overestimating the potential of the Lord of the Rings franchise as the central pillar of the company going forward? Do you think that franchise is going to get oversaturated and fatigued fast?
Maybe. Overestimating the holding power? No, I don't know.
We just spent an hour talking about Rohirrim, a cartoon that nobody expected, about a character that doesn't exist. And we're so excited.
That's a fair point. But there's a complete story that Tolkien drafted in the appendices. The story is there. I mean, okay, there is something to be said as a gentle counterpoint that you really can get a lot of mileage out of what Tolkien has given us. But I'm just saying it's finite. At some point, it's going to be...
You don't want a whole video game or movie about Ents and trees and just Ents and trees? And the creation of the shepherding of the forests.
From their point of view, I would love that. Yes, of course I do. I'd love that. I would love that.
Is there enough there? Because according to what you just said, there's not enough there. Tolkien didn't write enough about the Ents in the trees.
I didn't say that there wasn't enough there. I'm saying I never said there was not enough there. I just said that there's a finite. I said there's a finite area, an arena, if you will. You could call this an arena. A space within which more stories can be extrapolated on the backbone and the structure of what he's already given us in both the appendices and in the posthumously published works of Unfinished
Stephen
Tales
Gallagher,
and the Silmarillion.
Thanks for jumping in the chat. Great to see you, and looking forward to everything you got coming up.
Hello, Stephen. Thank you. Appreciate that, Stephen. Look, it is... I didn't say there's not enough. I just said it was finite. Now, there's a difference.
There's a comment in the chat, Cliff. Any Catholics out there? Because what you're saying sounds very similar to a discussion of the divine nature of inspired text. Are they untouchable? Are they unexpandable? Is Tolkien's text divine? And in the Catholic sense?
I am certain that I do not know enough about uh, the application of the way that Catholics understand what is divine. I'm not. You could say divinely inspired, obviously, very divinely inspired, but are the works themselves divine? I'm not sure.
Divine
I'm not
in the aspect of immovable, unupdatable, and unexpandable.
immutable. You mean immutable?
Immutable.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, they're not a monolith, but Tolkien's works are always treated by a lot of sections of fandom as if they are monolithic. But that's not always the case. There's a lot of breathing room in between the vertebrae. He gave us a lot of vertebrae in a whole big spinal column of history throughout Arda, and there's a lot of room in between the different levels. There's a lot of room, but there's always one end and there's another end. It's not like in Frank Herbert's Dune universe, you could go forward in time 10,000 years in history and have whole new chapters and a whole new massive saga, a complete saga with new characters and new politics across space and time. But Professor Tolkien's, if you're going to use a spinal vertebra, as a weird analogy, I don't know why, but there's a beginning and there's an end. And there's just a lot of space in between the vertebrae, but it is finite. I didn't say there's not enough. I just said there's a point where you're not going to go. Not like Frank Herbert did, obviously.
Well, I feel like this defeatist attitude from Gary Whitta here, a well-respected writer, and some other fan groups were posting a defeatist attitude that there just isn't enough Lord of the Rings and people aren't interested enough to play in Middle Earth in all of these forums. Gaming, movies, television, Magic the Gathering. And my argument is there's plenty of room. And Tolkien wanted Middle Earth and the Legendarium to expand by other hands and minds wielding paint and drama.
But there is a point of wisdom where you need to stop. And I'm going to say that point is that guy whose name we agreed not to mention anymore, who just foolishly sued the Tolkien estate because I think he sued Amazon, but he tried to publish this unauthorized sequel to The Lord of the Rings, completely unauthorized. And this is the point where I think you're at the tailbone. I mean, if you've gone from the brain,
so you don't think there's enough for Embracer
if you've
money?
gone from the brain all the way down the spinal column, and if you're at the tailbone, which is called the coccyx by medical professionals, if you're at the tail end of the tailbone, there's no more bone. There's no more vertebrae to go.
Look, I don't think quality versus quantity comes into play because, look, with Rings of Power, we all have opinions on Rings of Power. They spent $1 billion. The quality is there. Right?
Mostly.
The
quality is mostly there.
The quality is mostly there. They skimped on the writing, and it shows. That's it.
Yes, correct.
So quality,
correct.
And also because of the writing was skimped on, the season 1 doesn't feel like it goes anywhere, and season 2 may feel like it's going too fast, and maybe the next 3 seasons, who knows? I think the quality can be maintained, but they can't allow a game like Gollum to come out.
Okay,
take your time.
Mr. Matthew, 1989 says, yeah, but this sounds a lot like the difference between the scriptures, which are divinely inspired text, and the magisterium, which are publications and interpretations over 2,000 years provided by the church as a governing body, so to speak, by the church. So yeah, that's an interesting analogy. Yeah, I think that analogy.
Should do Cliff. I think we should do some homework and have a future episode discussion about Catholicism, the divine text.
So and he says, so we have to risk the occasional herniated disc? Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my bad analogy one further step. And I really do appreciate that.
I wonder...
Funny. We have to take that risk every now and then that somebody's going to try to make a story in between this bullet point in history, the first age, and some were not as far as the fourth age, right? Like that guy tried to do with a really bad
Tammy
Lord of the Rings
says
sequel.
leave religion out of it. The problem is that Tolkien was a hardcore Catholic, and his Catholicism was at the forefront of his personal life.
That is true. And his creative life. It was at the forefront of his creative life. Yes.
Lord of the Rings is not a Catholic text. He
didn't want it to be specifically that way, but it's in there. It's deep in the DNA of the story and the situations. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm not saying we have to keep religion top of mind, but I'm saying that every time there's like a movie like Tolkien, there's a bunch of religious people that come out and say, something, not enough Catholicism. And then Rings of Power comes out, something, not enough Catholicism. And I'm saying Tolkien was so adherent to his faith that I wonder if Lord of the Rings, the Lord of the Rings Legendarium, needs a sort of Vatican II. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Vatican II, but it was this moment in time, I believe early 70s or 60s or 70s, where the Vatican said, we are now in a future tense of the church. Vatican II opened up a lot of new ways of teaching the Bible. And a lot of conservative people still don't like Vatican II. And this is a very, very cursory glance at what it is. But what basically the Catholic Church at some point, and Tolkien was not a fan of it, because as part of Vatican II, they said we don't sing the hymns in ancient Latin anymore.
And he was so pissed off, he actually explosively responded in the church with the original liturgy in Latin.
Screaming at the top of his lungs.
He would not screaming, but with his magnificent voice, bellowing like an angry tree beard, like an angry ent.
I wonder if the Lord
wanted to
of the Rings,
stick to the original Latin.
Now that Christopher Tolkien is gone, and Priscilla Tolkien is gone, and J.R. Tolkien's gone, and new people are under control, and Embracer now owns Lord of the Rings rights. I wonder if there needs to be a Vatican II council where the Tolkien estate and the owners of all the rights, Amazon, Embracer, Warner Brothers, come together and say, all right, this is a determinant to all fandom and all creative arts that maybe the future of Tolkien's Middle-earth allows for comic books and graphic novels and spin-off novels by accomplished authors, and basically prepare for the copyright to expire by having a Vatican II moment where we say, you know what, Amazon, go for it. If you want to add stuff to the Legendarium, it's all yours. If Rohirrim wants to change the lore a little bit to shoot their story, go ahead. Yeah. It's not a concrete pillar. And I feel like the comments that we're seeing on Twitter today of like Embracer is overreaching and they're trying to milk Lord of the Rings, I don't feel that you can ever milk Lord of the Rings too much. I want to live in that world. Give me all of it. Give me fighting games, MMO games, single-player RPGs, action games. Give me a Rings of Power version of Return of the King multiplayer action adventure. Yes. You know, like give me everything because I want to be in it. And Cliff, I'm sure you want to read more into Middle-earth, and you would love to see graphic novels and books written and adapted.
Sure. Yeah, but I don't want to see stuff like that guy writing an unauthorized sequel going into an area that Professor Tolkien never thought was appropriate.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that there needs to be an authoritative decision to say it's okay. That tells us, the fans, and tells the companies, it's okay to explore, but not exploit.
Indeed. It's very, very smart for Elena to join us with this quote. She has the original quote from the letters of Tolkien. And thank you, Elena Duncan, for this. The Lord of the Rings is, of course, a fundamentally religious and Catholic work. Unconsciously so at first, but consciously in the revision. He did say that. So he did mean for that religiosity and that Catholicism to be deeply embedded in the DNA of it all, as I said earlier. But, when you asked me if it is a Catholic work, and I said, no, I meant to say that I'm not trying to at all to contradict what Professor Tolkien said, but I was trying to just illuminate that he said in his letters, quote, "It is not about anything per se, other than itself. The story is about itself. It's not about anything." He did say that as well, but he was deeply interested in the Catholic underpinnings of the story to be there and to be not just nuanced, but for them to be embedded noticeably in the themes and the structure of the narrative. And so that's how he wrote it. But he was
Cecilia's
also
correct
interested
in pointing out that
he was also
Tolkien-
interested in applicability. He didn't want an absolute analog. He wasn't always interested in this is going to be analogous to just a specific period of time in your religious background, in our historical background, period. He wanted the story, successfully so, to be applicable to other generations of people with other points of view, to come to it and get an enrichment from it as well.
Tolkien
So,
did not
yeah.
use his books to propagandize his religion. But
Not
he
so
says,
much. No.
Elena quotes Tolkien, "For the religious element is absorbed into the story and symbolism."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, deep in the DNA of the story, and that's where you
Deep
will
in the
find
DNA.
it. It's not overt, like he's just hammering you over the head with a big turkey leg, smash smash over your head. The fact is, his great artistry as a literary master and as a master of languages and a philologist was that he was able to create the story without being so clumsy and ham-fisted that he was clonking the reader over the head with it. It's embedded, and there's color, nuance, and thematic construct in the background of the way people interact with each other that extrapolates Catholic beliefs. And it's really subtle. His mastery at that subtlety is why it's so applicable to Jews or other Protestants or Muslims or other people from other backgrounds who read the story and they're like, oh, I get it. I get this. The idea that death is a gift. This conversation about mortality and the pursuit of deathlessness. It's in there, but he was never clumsy about it, which is why we are the great beneficiaries, as his worldwide readership shows. The popularity of new translated editions of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and new translations, new editions for countries around the world. And all these people come from different spiritual and political and cultural backgrounds. Doesn't matter. They are fully absorbed and enriched into Middle Earth because of the success of his storytelling and that he was never clumsy about it.
So, to close out the show, the writers of The Dark Crystal captured the religious mysticism of Jim Henson.
Jim Henson too, and that was a remarkable effort, but it was driven by Jim Henson. Jim hired a screenwriter, Dave Odell.
No, I'm talking. I'm not talking about the old one. I'm talking.
That's
the
where it
writers
started.
Of Age of Resistance.
The new writers picked up on the original, and they accurately did that. Did that.
Do you have faith, based on what they did with Jim Henson's mysticism in Age of Resistance? Do you have faith that Tolkien's religious undertones will be included in War of the Rohirrim?
I hope so. Yes, I really do hope so.
You have faith in their competency to execute at that level.
I have to start from there. I have to start with a basic level of faith in their competency. I mean, why else is somebody throwing millions and millions of dollars at those creative people, except they have some level of competency? Yes.
Well, there you go. All the reason to get hyped. You heard it from Molly from France that she is at an 8 out of 10 in anticipation of War of the Rohirrim. Her eyes have seen footage. Her eyes have seen the coming of the glory of the Rohan. Um, and she is at an 8 out of 10. I am at an 8 out of 10 as well, anticipating how great an extra long 2 hour and 10-minute animated Lord of the Rings. Cliff, where are you at right now? Scale 1 to 10 for War of the Rohirrim.
My excitement is 9.5, and I'm ready to go. I'm so ready to go. I want to go to the theater right now. Let's go.
All right. Make sure you guys go to theonering.net, where we have the first in-depth look written right after the panel. So it's very emotional. And
really good stuff.
Detailed.
And you know, I hate to tell the folks at home, but we are asking you to point your web browser to an actual website. Yes, we are asking you to do that. It's not through your socials. We're asking you to really visit the website and check out this amazing story, because it is very revealing that these people, these producers and the creatives, including Philippa Boyens, the Dark Crystal writers, and Philippa's daughter now, and, you know, the return of Éowyn herself, Miranda Otto, and the lead star of Succession, Mr. Brian Cox. He's coming to play this amazing character.
I'm so excited. Everything about this movie
cool.
is I'm ready for it. So that is Torn Tuesday. We do this every Tuesday as the news breaks. This week is preview week for Magic the Gathering's new Tales of Middle-earth. Next week is the big preview release. Big release of all the cards. It is we've heard that it is the biggest selling pre-order in Magic the Gathering history. Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth is the biggest selling pre-order set in Magic card history. The artwork is fantastic. The artwork is global, and we look forward to playing the game. Cliff, you're a Magic the Gathering player. I can't wait for you to experience this. We might have some more news on that next week. But until then, this is War of the Rohirrim. Huge update. This is as big as it gets. And we're so thankful for everybody at Warner Brothers and Philippa and Molly and everybody for getting us access and allowing us to post all of these details about the movie. And I hope you guys are excited.
I'm totally down for this.
And thank you, Demosthenes, for staying up late and posting all those articles.
Yes, big time thanks to Demosthenes. And we also want to give a shout out to the strike, because really fun Lord of the Rings themed writers strike a picket line in front of Prime Video last Friday. And our previous co-host, Chelsea Schwartz, was there. And she's got photos and videos. Now, she's not available today because of work, but she was going to share some of those. And I believe next week we will have some really fun, really cool, and entertaining videos and pictures from the writer's strike that was all Lord of the Rings themed. And we'll share some of that with you next week, as well as much more news as we get more news about the wrap of Season 2 of The Rings of Power, all wrapped up. And now they're going straight into post-production, a long, aggressive schedule of post-production. We're going to talk to you more next week about the Embracer Group, what kind of weird and interesting things they're doing as they do restructuring and they try to handle this IP called Lord of the Rings. What else do we have, Justin? Anything weird or funny that we can preview for next week's show?
Thank you, everybody, so much. And Cliff, you end the show with your classic quote.
I will wrap us up and send us all home. Everybody join us on social media. We are theonering.net. Take out the dot and then follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and please, our Discord. That is the One Ring Net. You can find us there. Myself, I am QuickBeam2000 on Twitter and Instagram. Clifford Broadway. There's Justin Sewell. We're signing off. It has been a wonderful Torn Tuesday. And until next week, when we see you all again here in our lovely little hobbity corner of the internet, I want you guys to take good care of yourselves. Be careful, be loving and supportive and forgiving and all those things that are going to get us to next week. So live a good life for yourself. Be careful and be gentle with one another. Until then, be safe tonight. I love to say good night and good luck, but I do like to say it in Spanish. Buenos noches y buena suerte. Bye, everybody. I am so excited for the preview of War of the Rohirrim. I can't wait.
Pay your writers.
Can't wait.